Attacks across the Middle East continue this morning as the United States and Iran give conflicting signals on possible peace talks. President Trump says conversations are underway with multiple major points of agreement. Iran, however, denies such talks, with the Speaker of the country's parliament calling it, quote, fake news used to manipulate the financial and oil markets. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is also weighing in, saying that Trump believes there is a way to leverage military gains into agreement that would, quote, safeguard our vital interests. Netanyahu added, however, that Israel will continue attacks in Iran and Lebanon as damage can be seen across Tehran from Israeli airstrikes. Iran this morning is hitting back. An explosion was heard and smoke seen in Tel Aviv just hours ago, leaving buildings damaged and cars burning. Israel's emergency response service says several people were wounded as search and rescue teams deployed to the area. Sirens are sounding today not only in Israel but across the Gulf. Kuwait says it intercepted missiles. Saudi Arabia says it destroyed drones. And Bahrain says it urged residents to head to the nearest safe place.
Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal is detailing what drove President Trump's abrupt U-turn on negotiations with Iran. According to the paper, that reversal came after the White House learned of high-level talks involving Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan aimed at finding an off-ramp to the war. As the Journal reports, Trump's shift Monday followed a series of closed-door discussions through Middle Eastern intermediaries that U.S. officials said gave them hope an agreement to settle the conflict was possible. It also reflected a growing desire by Trump and some of his advisors to bring the war to a close, according to people familiar with the matter, as the president faces political and economic fallout from the conflict. So, Hagar, yesterday morning, I guess around this time, President Trump posts on social media, we're talking to the Iranians. The markets love it. Oil prices go down for a while. Then the Iranian side comes out and says, we're not talking in any direct or meaningful way with the Americans. Oil's back over $100 a barrel in trading this morning. So what do you think exactly is going on here? Do you think President Trump feels like we've done what we wanted to do in destroying some of their military capabilities, and now it's time to sit down and negotiate?
A little bit. I mean, from the very beginning, there was language that Trump used to give himself flexibility. When he pinned, for example, this war, saying the Iranians need to rise up. Now it's your turn to rise up. He's not seeing them rise up. By the way, that's fair. They're not rising up because they're staying home to be sheltered from bombs, and also because the Iranian regime has restarted its crackdown. So they know that they would hit the streets facing guns, death, and torture. So there hasn't been enough time there, but he deliberately did that to make it seem like, I'm giving you the space. If you don't take that opportunity, that's on you. In the meantime, he's weighing his options. I know from my work in Washington that while the plan for the military strategy for the war was very well planned, there was no plan for the day after, largely because it started earlier than they had expected. They had expected this war to start later in the spring. And so now he left flexibility for himself and seems to be hoping for a scenario similar to Venezuela. I am not a believer that you could ever have a scenario similar to Venezuela, because you're dealing with a regime that, whatever moderate you're dealing with, is still a fanatic, ideological hardliner. And you already see it from the terms that the Iranian regime put forth. I think it was a week ago, Pezeshkian put terms to end the war that were completely absurd. So there may be an effort on Trump's part to say this to boost markets, and he knows that. I do think this will be short, and he's leaving this window open. I would not believe the Iranian regime, and never. I have never, in all the work I've ever done with the Iranian regime, they do nothing but lie through their teeth. So I don't believe them when they say that there are no talks, because their supporters, which are 20% of the country, want to see the regime pummel the United States and Israel. So I believe talks are happening, and I think Trump is leaving.
I was going to say yesterday, the second after Jonathan read what the president wrote, I said, well, of course, the Iranians will immediately deny that any of this is happening, because they've been lying through their teeth since 1979. They lied before they got into power, talking to the Carter administration, suggesting that, oh, yes, we care about U.S. interest and blah, blah, blah. And it continues. The lying continues. But that said, Jonathan, there have been negotiations going on. But you say the negotiations that are going on behind the scenes, the escalation of the war. You say we find ourselves now in this very strange place between exit and escalation in your new piece in The Atlantic.
Yeah, big writing in similar lines as the Journal. There have been some talks, but it is through intermediaries. It's second degree. There has not been much in the way of direct contact yet. And the U.S. is still offering a 15-point plan, which is the exact 15-point plan they'd offered prior to the conflict, in those talks that obviously didn't lead anywhere. So it's unclear whether there's actual room for agreement right now. But I think both sides are looking to see if there's potential for an off-ramp. And the president is aware. Prices, soaring. Prices, worried about, Republicans deeply worried about the midterms. So he's looking to explore a little space here and also buy some time to consider what the next move might be. And we should note, military assets, more of them, are still heading to the region. They're still preparing for a potential Karg Island sort of ground invasion. That still is very much in play. The president is considering it. And then there are the Iranians who at the moment, have no incentive to give up the Strait of Hormuz. They're looking to get paid like some sort of licensing fee.
They actually want it to be like the Suez.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and saying that Egypt gets a fee, so why don't we for this one? So there's a lot still to be done here. But I think there was a pause, and it was in part done because of the markets. The president looking to create a little space to see if an off-ramp is possible, but it's not a guarantee.
Yeah, the Wall Street Journal had a great op-ed years ago about al-Qaeda when we kept killing the number 3 in al-Qaeda, I think, and people were saying you're only making them stronger. And they said, no, the Obi-Wan Kenobi rule of strike me down, Darth, and you're only making me stronger does not apply to war. And I would say it doesn't apply here, but could you explain how killing the Ayatollah and killing political leaders who actually have the best chance of striking a deal with the United States, a lot of the people who have been killed, doesn't make Iran stronger, but it does make the leaders still there, the Revolutionary Guard, more powerful, which means the people that we're actually negotiating with are going to be even more hardened. And it may be tougher because some of the people who have been taken out may be tougher to get that final deal.
Well, yeah, if they linger, if this regime lingers and they try to negotiate a way to remain intact under the guise of, quote, moderate leadership, then that regime will only be worse.
But that's not their plan.
No, well, the White House plan, you mean?
No. That's not the Revolutionary Guard's plan. And do we really have any say on whether they linger or not? I suspect because, again, this is not. I was talking to an intel person yesterday who said, this isn't Iraq. You don't take out Saddam and the entire government collapses. He said, this is more like, these people have been through their World War II together, and this is like 1955. And you've got a lot of people that not only you have 3,000-year history, but you've got this fighting experience together. And the Revolutionary Guard, the connections are more interwoven and more powerful than we'll ever have seen in Venezuela or Iraq. Now, again, this could all collapse tomorrow.
Yeah.
Nobody's saying it couldn't. But the Revolutionary Guard is going to be hard to displace, aren't they?
It's hard to displace any dictatorship. It depends on the military. And that's, by the way, that's the rule in general. Any dictator is only as strong as their military is loyal. And you've seen that over time.
But that's singular. Again, that's singular. That's Saddam Hussein. That's Vladimir
Well, Assad
Putin.
Fell when the military defected. Mubarak fell when the military defected. If you try to pursue cracks in the military and that's why you hear Trump over and over again saying, you guys need to surrender, you the IRGC, you need to surrender and lay down your arms and nothing will be taken against you. Now, that was 3.5 weeks ago, so that could have shifted over time. But that's why he's communicating that, because we know that if there's no military and no threat of a military coup, it would be much worse to have a military coup. I'm not trying to pretend that the regime is easy to replace or move. But I would say that it has zero economic leg to stand on.
Right.
And with or without a war, in a matter of months, it wouldn't have been able to pay its own soldiers. So the U.S. knows that. The U.S. knows the regime is standing on a cliff. And this war escalates accelerates that fall off the cliff. And if they can manage it properly to prevent a military coup, you could have something real there. But the opposition is not well united. It's not like in Venezuela, which at least they had some space to organize and run and so on. The thing to really remember here, though, I will say to your earlier point about killing all of these leaders, it's not insignificant. The regime right now is I don't want to say crumbling because it's very much intact, but nobody trusts each other. It's chaos from what I hear. They're suspicious of each leader trying to come out, now of the Speaker of the Parliament, now the Foreign Minister. These are the two kind of coming out as potential negotiators. And that can undermine it.
So Jonathan, you had the clerics led by the Ayatollah. You have the politicians. And you have the Revolutionary Guard. And there was always this sort of scramble for power and leadership there. Right now, it appears that it's the Revolutionary Guard. And they do not seem the least bit interested in being displaced. They have worked very effectively, ruthlessly, brutally to destroy any opposition efforts. There is, most people suggest, no real opposition movements that are organized enough to step in and replace what we have right now.
Yeah, they're in charge, and that's why it almost doesn't matter the health of this Ayatollah, which is very much in question, because they're running the show right now. So one other quick note: the president received a lot of counsel over the weekend. We report in the story that his deadline and the threat to wipe out Iran's electrical infrastructure was a very bad idea. That if that were to happen, it would create, first of all, Iran would hit back that much harder to its neighbors. So the Gulf states were telling the U.S., don't do that, not like this. Also, if the state were to fall, which there was a fear that it might, breeding ground for terrorism, refugee crisis, and the like. The president has been told throughout, he's been counseled, don't do ultimatums. He did one over the weekend out of a fit of anger of how things were going. He pushed it 5 days. The thought would be if they can make any sort of progress in talks, he can push it again. There's even a chance of that first direct meeting this weekend in Pakistan.
So the deadline now is Friday. We'll see if that extends from here.